My daughter, Emma, called me in a panic, worried about her mother seeing someone else. Even through the poor video connection, I could feel her distress. She revealed that my wife had been spending several nights a week with a man named Michael Thompson, the town's sheriff, known for his flashy truck and occasional rides in a borrowed sports car. Emma described him and confirmed her fears, leading me to assure her that I'd come home as soon as possible. Emma begged for my quick return, stressing the need to handle the situation discreetly. I promised I'd do my best and told her I loved her before ending the call. I am James Walker, a 42-year-old design specialist at a major electronics company. I'm also a major in the National Guard, currently on a year-long deployment in Afghanistan, serving on the command staff. I've been married to my wonderful wife, Lisa, for 18 years, and we have an incredible 15-year-old daughter named Emma. Lisa, though 40, looks much younger. She's the most beautiful woman I know, with a figure that somehow got even better after having Emma. Her shoulder-length brown hair and sparkling brown eyes are unforgettable. Our marriage has always been strong, even during my deployments. Our time together is always warm and loving, and our intimate moments are passionate and fulfilling. Neither of us has ever doubted the other's fidelity. So what went wrong? I had no idea. I quickly arranged for 30 days of emergency family leave and caught a flight that, after 26 long hours, landed me back home on a Friday evening. I rented a car and drove to our neighborhood, parking half a block from our house. It was mid-November, and the streetlights cast a strange glow on the familiar streets. I saw lights on in the living room, kitchen, and master bedroom. I watched Lisa moving around, seemingly getting ready to go out. I called Emma, who answered quietly after a few rings. I reassured her and asked if her mom was going out. Emma said Lisa had been in her room for over an hour, had taken a shower, and seemed excited. Emma was upset, wondering why her mom was doing this to us. I told her not to jump to conclusions until we knew more. Emma asked about my plans, and I said I'd follow them and see what was happening before deciding what to do. She warned me to be careful and asked if I needed a change. I said my camo fatigues would do just fine. We exchanged "I love yous," and I assured her we'd always be together, no matter what. At 7, a black SUV pulled into the driveway, and a tall, well-dressed man got out. I thought he'd go to the door, but he talked on his phone instead. The lights in the master bedroom went out. A moment later, Lisa stepped onto the porch. She locked the door behind her and walked quickly toward her date, smiling brightly. Even though she looked amazing, my heart broke when I saw her check to make sure Emma wasn't watching before sharing a warm kiss with the sheriff. He helped her into the car and they drove off. I managed to take a photo of the kiss with my phone. I followed them, keeping a safe distance in the light traffic. They drove across town to the Evergreen Inn. I parked a few spaces away and watched them walk into the hotel, arms around each other. I took another photo, showing how comfortable they were together. They looked like a married couple on a date night. I waited until they were inside, then put on my camo hat and sunglasses and followed. Inside, I couldn't see them, but didn't worry. People smiled and thanked me for my service, which I acknowledged as I checked the events board. One event stood out: a charity ball for St. Mary's Hospital on the 3rd floor, with live music playing. I skipped the elevator and took the stairs, needing the exercise after the long flights. I followed the sound of the music and easily found the ballroom. As I passed by the entrance, I glimpsed Lisa and Michael inside, acting like the perfect couple. They greeted friends and supporters, smiling and laughing. My wife briefly looked in my direction, but there was no recognition. As far as she knew, I was still 10,000 miles away, dealing with the challenges of Afghanistan. I also noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding rings. I walked past the entrance and ducked into the men's room, sitting in a stall to collect my thoughts. It was hard to process what I had just seen. I had always believed my marriage to Lisa was unshakable. While I was serving my country, my loving wife was betraying me. What was wrong with these people? Didn't they realize the woman hanging on the sheriff was married to a soldier overseas? Tears stung my eyes, but I wiped them away. There was no time for self-pity. I needed a plan. Right now, I was facing a much different enemy than the ones in Afghanistan. I stayed in the bathroom stall for about half an hour, letting the event reach full swing before heading back to the ballroom. Only a few people noticed me as I slipped in, sticking close to the wall and staying away from the bar and food tables. I found a spot behind a pillar where I had a clear view of the room. Although I didn't have a ticket, my uniform carried more weight than any piece of paper. The young man taking tickets saluted me and said, "Welcome, sir," as I entered. I couldn't help but think it was a shame my wife and her lover didn't show the same respect for me and the uniform I wore. It took me a few minutes to locate Lisa and Michael. They were dancing to a slow song, her arms around his neck, her head resting on his chest, his hands placed possessively on her hips. I took several photos, struggling to keep my composure. The urge to rush in and confront them was strong, but I knew it wouldn't solve anything. What I needed was undeniable proof of their affair, and then I would find a way to respond that would be more satisfying and just. They danced another song and then, arm in arm, made their way to a table. They shared a kiss and a tender caress before sitting down. I captured it all on my phone. Having seen enough for the moment, I left the ballroom and found a seat in the hallway where I could watch the doors and the elevators. My training as an officer had taught me patience, and it paid off as I waited for another 2 hours. Eventually, the event wound down and people started leaving. It wasn't long before Lisa and Michael exited, standing just outside the door, talking. After a minute, they smiled at each other and walked to the elevators. Instead of going down, they pressed the button to go up. It was strange. I was only about 15 feet away, sitting on a bench against the wall in my camo fatigues and sunglasses, my name tag clearly visible. Other couples noticed me, some smiling or waving, but Lisa and Michael were so engrossed in each other that they didn't even glance in my direction. I watched them enter the elevator, hand in hand, and noted that it stopped on the 11th floor. After confirming the elevator didn't go back down, I headed to the registration desk. I explained to the attendant that I had an urgent message for Michael Thompson and showed my government ID, requesting his room number. After some hesitation, she disclosed that he was in room 1114. Thanking her, I took the elevator to the 11th floor and found room 1114. Checking the hallway to ensure no one else was around, I pressed my ear to the door, hearing only soft conversation. Unsatisfied, I moved to the stairwell and used a handkerchief to keep the door from locking. Glancing at my watch, I noted it was midnight. Emma had mentioned that her mother usually came home between 2 and 3, and once even as late as 7, so I prepared for a long wait. My Army training in patience served me well. Through the window in the stairwell door, I kept an eye on room 1114, ensuring I wouldn't miss them when they emerged. As I waited, I tried to focus on the task at hand, but my mind kept drifting to the thought of Lisa with Michael. My heart was more than broken. I felt my life spiraling into a dark place filled with pain, rejection, and humiliation. I knew I had to stay composed for Emma's sake, but the realization that Lisa, the woman I loved more than life itself and trusted completely, was at that moment giving her love and passion to another man, overwhelmed me with a tidal wave of pain. Around 130, I stepped out of the stairwell and pressed my ear against their door, hearing faint moaning. Then I distinctly heard Lisa exclaiming, "Yes, oh God, yes, do it, Michael, just like that, you're so good." A sound I had heard many times during our own intimate moments. With tears streaming down my cheeks, I returned to the stairwell, anticipating they would finish soon and leave their love nest. At 2, I positioned myself outside their room, ready to capture their exit on my cell phone. 15 minutes later, I heard the chain being removed and the door opening. I began recording as they emerged. Michael had his arm around her, and she leaned against him, smiling. Lisa looked freshly scrubbed and well-groomed, while Michael seemed pleased with himself. They kissed briefly and turned toward the elevators. That's when Lisa noticed me leaning against the wall. I confronted her, asking how her evening with Michael went. She was shocked, placing her hand on her heart and expressing disbelief, falling to her knees and pleading, saying this wasn't supposed to happen and that I wasn't meant to see it. Michael, trying to compose himself, insisted it wasn't what it seemed, claiming Lisa was just helping with his new campaign. I sarcastically remarked on the irony of such campaign tactics involving infidelity. I questioned his morality, highlighting how this was affecting my marriage while I was serving the country. Michael attempted to deny any involvement, urging Lisa to support his story. Ignoring him, Lisa recounted the kissing, moaning, and phrases I had heard through the door. I admitted defeat, acknowledging that she was now his, and expressed my frustration, calling them both cowards. I emphasized that even Emma knew about their actions. Michael stood there, stunned, unsure how to respond, while Lisa knelt on the floor, sobbing. I told Lisa not to bother coming home that night and suggested she stay with her lover instead. I mentioned my intention to comfort our daughter, and that I would file for divorce on Monday, followed by informing the media about the sheriff's actions. I instructed Lisa to stay away until my 30-day leave ended, after which she could decide how to proceed with her life. Lisa pleaded for forgiveness, asking me not to tell Emma, who already knew. I expressed my confusion over her actions, but acknowledged that she and Michael had chosen each other. Disheartened, I left for the elevator as Lisa apologized, but I couldn't accept her remorse. Seeing their apparent happiness together, I left with a harsh farewell and stepped into the elevator, leaving them behind. When I arrived home, I found Emma waiting for me, clearly upset. She embraced me tightly, expressing how much she had missed me. I reassured her of my feelings and confirmed that I had found her mother and Michael together. Emma said she wasn't worried about her mother's absence, feeling neglected by her. She pleaded to come with me when I returned to Afghanistan, but I explained that she needed to stay. Emma insisted she couldn't stay with her mother, expressing resentment. Despite her feelings, I reminded her that her mother was still her mother. Emma tearfully expressed her belief that her mother didn't love her and sought comfort in my arms. I held her as she cried, finally convincing her to go to bed. I secured the house, setting the door chains in case Lisa tried to come home. I had no proof that Lisa and Michael had used any of our bedrooms for their trysts, but I didn't want to take a chance, so I slept on the couch, even though I wasn't sure they hadn't been there either. Sleep came only in spurts, 45 minutes here, half an hour there. I kept thinking about how I would handle the situation when Lisa came to collect her clothes and personal items. I could have been nice and taken a hotel room, leaving the house to her, but I couldn't find it in my heart to be that kind. She destroyed our marriage so she could suffer the inconvenience of being displaced for a month. Besides, I was certain Michael would be happy to put her up. They'd been acting like a married couple, now they could live like one for a while. Call it a trial marriage. Emma and I managed to sleep until nearly noon. I woke up first and prepared some coffee, then made us a simple breakfast of toast and scrambled eggs. We chatted about mundane things while eating, trying to keep the mood light. Afterward, we rinsed the dishes and loaded them into the dishwasher. Suddenly, the phone rang, making both of us jump. Emma answered it, and I could hear her speaking with her mother, Lisa. Emma's voice was steely as she questioned her mother's sincerity, mentioning the ongoing affair with Michael Thompson and emphasizing that it wasn't just a single mistake. She admitted that she had urged me to come home, pointing out her mother's neglect and obsession with the affair. Despite Lisa's pleas not to make things worse for Michael, Emma refused, her frustration and disappointment clear. After the call ended, Emma turned to me, remarking on her mother's apparent confusion and inability to understand the gravity of her actions. She worried that Lisa didn't grasp why I didn't want her back home. I reassured Emma that her mother's lack of understanding would become clear as the consequences unfolded. We spent the rest of the day trying to distract ourselves from thoughts of Lisa and Michael. We discussed Emma's future, and I suggested she stay with my mom until my deployment ended, despite her concerns about her friends' reactions to her mother's behavior. I assured her that true friends would stand by her, though she seemed doubtful. Late in the afternoon, the phone rang again. This time it was Lisa. I answered but immediately handed the phone to Emma when I heard Lisa say, "James, please let me explain." Emma's voice was cold as she asked, "What, Mom?" She held the phone away so I could hear Lisa's desperate attempt to speak with me. Emma demanded to know why Lisa had acted so deceitfully for the past 6 months, accusing her of tearing the family apart. Lisa tried to defend herself, claiming she never meant to hurt anyone, but Emma was relentless in her criticism. Lisa's tears were audible as she insisted she loved Emma and me, but Emma remained skeptical. Lisa then quietly asked for some personal items, including clothes and toiletries, expressing regret and frustration. Emma sarcastically mentioned the possibility of Lisa becoming pregnant with Michael's child and the complications it would bring. She told Lisa she would pack her belongings, including clothes and makeup, and leave them at the curb. After ending the call, Emma broke down in tears. I wrapped my arms around her, acknowledging her anger but reassuring her that we would get through this together. After another hug, I left her to gather her mother's things. I retreated to my office to strategize, drawing on my military training to plan our next steps carefully. This situation required as much precision and thought as any mission. I planned to hire a divorce lawyer, cancel our joint credit cards, get separate cards for Emma and myself, change the beneficiary on my life insurance and retirement plans to Emma, and transfer half of our funds to new accounts that only Emma and I could access. The most challenging part was figuring out how to deal with Michael. I wanted to ensure he faced consequences for his actions and expose his true character. Later that evening, around 800, the phone rang again. I answered, identifying myself as James Walker. The caller introduced himself as Ray Swanson, a city councilman and friend of Michael's. He said he wanted to discuss what he called a little misunderstanding involving me, my wife, and Michael. His casual tone irritated me, given the seriousness of the situation. Ray suggested that we could resolve things amicably, but I doubted it would be that simple. Ray advised that there was no need for hostility, suggesting this was just a misunderstanding involving adults who might have overindulged. He sounded confident that a discussion could smooth everything over. I sharply rebutted, stating that Michael Thompson had been having an affair with my wife for the past 6 months while I was deployed in Afghanistan, and I had caught them together the previous night. Ray acknowledged my difficult position but hoped we could find a resolution for everyone's sake. I questioned who he meant by everyone, emphasizing that my primary concern was my daughter, and the concerns of others didn't matter to me. Ray mentioned the mayor's influence in the community and the potential repercussions for anyone tarnishing his reputation. I asked if he was threatening me. Ray quickly clarified that he was merely stating the reality and didn't want to see harm come to me or my loved ones. I then issued a stern warning to Ray. I explained my experience dealing with real threats over the past 6 months and emphasized that I wouldn't shy away from confronting Michael, who I saw as dishonorable for having an affair with my wife. I conveyed that neither Ray nor Michael had ever faced someone like me before. I made it clear that I was unfazed by their perceived power and warned them of the consequences of challenging me. I mentioned that Lisa hadn't told Michael about the repercussions of involving herself with someone like me. I also highlighted the strong support network I had among former military personnel within a 100-mile radius, emphasizing our disdain for those who exploit soldiers' spouses. I advised Ray to distance himself from Michael to avoid the fallout. Ray attempted to negotiate, suggesting that a substantial sum of money might resolve the situation. I dismissed his offer, expressing my anger towards Michael for exploiting a soldier's wife while I was deployed. I made it clear that no amount of money could fix the pain caused to my daughter and me. I insisted that the only satisfactory resolution would involve Michael and my wife facing the same pain they inflicted on us. I authorized Ray to relay this message to both of them. Ray expressed concern, acknowledging the potential fallout. He sought a resolution to mitigate the consequences. I responded by outlining the steps necessary for resolution. Michael must publicly admit to the affair and resign as sheriff. I emphasized that nothing less would prevent me from exposing him and seeking retribution. Ray was surprised at the seriousness of my intentions. I assured him of my resolve and excused myself, mentioning that I needed to prepare dinner for my daughter. Emma arrived from the garage, informing me that she had placed her mother's belongings by the curb, where they were picked up by someone in a black Mercedes. Ray joked about the possibility of the clothes ending up for sale at a thrift store. I mentioned that I had packed Emma's regular clothes, but hesitated to include her mother's provocative outfits. I expressed my discomfort at the sight of some particularly revealing attire Lisa owned. Emma understood my concern. I advised her that she would eventually need to address the situation with her mother, to which she responded that she would do so when the timing felt right. The weekend passed without further incident. Emma helped me with chores while I focused on my plan to expose Michael Thompson. On Monday morning, I contacted John Foster, a reporter at the local paper and a former sergeant in my National Guard unit, and arranged to meet him for coffee at Danny's. John greeted me warmly, and during our conversation, I provided him with information about Michael's affair with the wife of a deployed soldier. I refrained from disclosing the soldier's identity, emphasizing the sensitivity. I stressed that if I were in the soldier's position, I wouldn't want such a betrayal to become public knowledge. I shared observations of Michael's inappropriate interactions with the soldier's wife, leaving the decision of how to proceed with John. I informed him that, contrary to rumors, the woman involved in the affair was not separated or going through a divorce. Her husband had only recently learned of the situation. I acknowledged John's concerns about making baseless accusations against the sheriff and the risk of legal action. When asked about evidence, I showed him the pictures and videos I had taken, though I requested that my wife's identity be partially obscured. John understood the gravity of the situation and appeared uneasy. I told him that I was prepared to face the shame that would come with revealing the truth. I emphasized how Michael Thompson had taken advantage of my absence while I was deployed overseas, engaging in an affair with my wife. John, recognizing the seriousness of the situation, agreed to investigate further. After confirming that the affair had persisted throughout my deployment, I transferred the evidence to his phone. We reminisced briefly about our time in the service before parting ways with a firm handshake. Next, I needed a reliable divorce lawyer. I searched online, reviewed recommendations, and selected R.J. Collins ESQ. I scheduled an appointment for that afternoon. Upon arriving at the office, I was surprised to find that R.J. stood for Rebecca Joy, a woman in her 50s with a non-nonsense attitude. She got straight to the point, asking how she could assist me. I explained that I needed a divorce, warning her that it wouldn't be amicable due to my wife's affair with the town sheriff during my deployment. Rebecca was taken aback, dropping her pen. I confirmed that the sheriff in question was indeed Michael Thompson, and provided her with a detailed account of the situation. She listened attentively, taking notes and occasionally asking for clarification. When I mentioned my daughter Emma, Rebecca inquired about her feelings regarding the matter. I explained that Emma was deeply upset and didn't want to stay with her mother during my deployment. Considering Emma's age and preferences, Rebecca suggested she stay with my mother instead. I agreed and decided to contact my mom to arrange it. Our discussion continued for nearly an hour. I provided Rebecca with an overview of our financial situation, and she advised me to discuss potential resolutions with Lisa. I explained that witnessing the closeness between my wife and Michael left no possibility for reconciliation, and requested that she prepare the divorce papers promptly. Over the following week, Lisa contacted me several times, but I kept the conversations brief, promising to update her on the proceedings later. On Friday, Rebecca informed me that the divorce papers were ready and asked where they should be served. I told her I intended to invite Lisa to my home the following Monday at 2:00 p.m. while Emma was at school, so she could be served with the papers. I called Lisa and arranged the meeting, cutting her off when she tried to explain her actions, stating she would have the opportunity to speak later. Lisa arrived a few minutes early on Monday, and we sat down at the kitchen table. Seeing her, I felt a pang of emotion despite everything. She looked beautiful. I offered her coffee, but she declined, asking only for water. I assured her she would have the chance to speak, but informed her that someone would soon arrive to serve her with the divorce papers. Her expression turned pale. I explained that I didn't want this any more than I had wanted her affair with Michael. It seemed neither of us would get what we wanted. Lisa pleaded with me to listen, hoping for a resolution. She recounted how she had worked on Michael's election campaign and developed a friendship with him during my deployment. Feeling lonely and depressed, she found solace in his companionship. Lisa recalled attending a dinner event with Michael, where he advised her to use her maiden name and leave her wedding rings at home to avoid gossip. She admitted she hadn't thought much of it at the time, but recognized now that removing her rings was a mistake. That night she mingled with many people who perceived her as a single woman. When I asked when the affair began, Lisa said it didn't start immediately, but rather after a night of close dancing and a goodnight kiss when Michael dropped her off. She justified her actions by expressing her loneliness and the allure of being treated like royalty by someone prominent in the community. I confronted her, questioning her decision to engage in such behavior while I was away. She acknowledged her wrongdoing and admitted to feeling confused and longing for my presence. Despite my absence, she continued, Michael's company provided her with enjoyment and helped alleviate her loneliness. Lisa confessed to the increasing frequency of their encounters, further deepening my sense of betrayal. Kathy admitted to the deepening intimacy between them as their affair progressed. She confessed they started meeting several times a week. One evening after a romantic dinner, Michael invited her back to his house. Despite her initial hesitation, she agreed. Kathy felt guilty afterward and insisted that Michael take her home. After telling Michael she wanted to end things and expressing her love for me, she reconsidered. Michael had left her alone for a while before reaching out again, expressing his longing for her company. He assured her that he missed her and wanted to see her again, but only as friends. He apologized for their previous actions and promised not to put her in another compromising situation. Despite her initial resolve, Kathy admitted she agreed to meet Michael again the following weekend. Kathy shared that Michael took her to an exclusive gathering at a friend's mansion on the Bluffs. She described it as a small party with only 5 or 6 influential couples in town. During the event, Kathy was taken aback when the wife of a well-known doctor asked how she managed to captivate Michael. Caught off guard, Kathy fabricated a story about being separated from her husband and going through a divorce. The gossip about Kathy's fabricated separation and supposed divorce quickly spread throughout the tight-knit community, leaving her feeling trapped. During a weekend when our daughter Emma was visiting her grandparents, Kathy spent more time with Michael at his place, which led to the continuation of their affair. Kathy expressed deep regret for the pain she caused Emma and me, admitting her actions were the biggest mistake of her life and wishing she could undo them. However, she acknowledged it was too late to fix the damage. When I asked about her feelings for Michael, Kathy confessed she was unsure if she loved him but enjoyed their time together. Despite my probing questions about their relationship and the possibility of marriage, Kathy remained uncertain about their future. The doorbell rang and I suggested it might be for Kathy. She walked slowly to the door and confirmed her identity when handed a manila envelope containing divorce papers. Kathy stood there for a while, visibly upset, before closing the door and turning to me, tears streaming down her face. She asked if our relationship was truly over, and I affirmed it was. Despite her declarations of love, I countered that she loved the life we had, which she had thrown away. I informed her that Emma would stay with my mother until my deployment ended. Kathy broke down, overwhelmed with regret. The next day, the local newspaper's front page featured a photo with a headline questioning the identity of a married woman seen leaving a hotel room with Mayor Thompson. The image showed Kathy and the mayor kissing as they exited room 1114, accompanied by a caption questioning whether her husband, serving in Afghanistan, knew about the affair. The article described the charity event they attended and hotel records confirming the mayor's room reservation. Additionally, the couple was photographed leaving the room at 2 a.m. The story mentioned unverified rumors of regular meetings over the past 6 months between Kathy and the mayor while her husband was deployed. The newspaper defended its decision to publish the story, citing the mayor's prominent position and the betrayal of a soldier serving overseas, causing a significant uproar within minutes of the paper hitting doorsteps. The mayor's office quickly went into damage control, claiming the story was entirely fabricated. They insisted that Mayor Thompson would never jeopardize any marriage, especially that of a soldier serving his country. They argued that the photograph was an obvious fake, attributing the situation to unnamed sinister individuals targeting the mayor. A press conference was promised later that afternoon to set the record straight. However, over the past 6 months, too many people had seen Thompson and Kathy together in public, displaying affection. Gradually, his friends and supporters began distancing themselves. Several individuals anonymously called the newspaper, confirming they had witnessed the affair on multiple occasions and expressing outrage upon learning that Kathy's husband was deployed in the Army during the affair. That afternoon, Mayor Thompson held his news conference. None of his city council allies stood by him. The only people supporting him were his staff, and even half of them were conspicuously absent. The newspaper and TV stations were present, recording the entire event as Thompson expressed shock at being accused of such a heinous act. He assured everyone that he and the woman were merely acquaintances and had never done anything inappropriate or dishonorable. Midway through his speech, Kathy pushed her way through the crowd and took the microphone. In a courageous act, Kathy revealed her identity, declaring, "My name is Kathy Crawford. I am the wife of Army Major Robert Crawford, and for the past 6 months, I have been involved with Mayor Thompson." Thompson tried to dismiss her, claiming he didn't know her and accusing her of lying. Kathy confronted him, expressing her shame and heartbreak, accusing him of pursuing her, despite knowing she was married and her husband was deployed. Tearfully, she apologized to her husband through the TV cameras and left, while reporters swarmed the mayor with questions. He turned and stormed back into City Hall. I must admit that exposing everything to the public was a blow to my already fragile self-esteem. However, I knew the risks when I approached John Foster, my newspaper contact. This was right after the president of the city council announced the mayor's resignation and declared that the council would govern until a new election could be held. Although I should have felt vindicated, all I felt was a deep emptiness. Loneliness overwhelmed me, and I missed my wife more than I ever thought possible. That afternoon, my reporter friend called to inform me that Thompson had packed up and left town without leaving any forwarding address, and my soon-to-be ex-wife hadn't gone with him. In the remaining days of my leave, I spent as much time as possible with my daughter. In the last week, I allowed Kathy to move back into the house. Emma and I traveled to my mother's home, 60 miles away, where I enrolled her in school, promising to return and get her as soon as my deployment was over. The following week, I was on a plane back to Afghanistan, my heart burning with anger I intended to unleash on the enemy in the desert. What happened to Kathy? A few weeks later, she moved in with Thompson, and they both left town. Did Robert return from Afghanistan? Yes, but he suffered critical injuries, and his daughter helped him recover. He lost one of his legs in an ambush. Currently, he works as a design specialist for a large electronics firm and lives with his daughter. Occasionally, he speaks about the challenges faced by soldiers who have served abroad.